Today is Monday, August 24th, 2020. My name is Matthew Simmons. I'm interviewing Xavier Tavera for the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Mr. Tavera, that this interview will be placed in the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection at UT Austin. If there is anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there's something you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we are not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your consent. So I'll ask you a series of 5 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, or no, I do not agree after each one. There are 2 questions we need to make sure you agree on before we go forward, okay? Voces wishes to archive your interview along with any photographs and other documentation at the Benson Library at UT Austin. We will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to Voces. Do you give Voces consent to archive your interview and your materials at the Benson Library?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Do you grant Voces copyright over the interview and any material you provide?
Yes, I agree.
Do you agree to allow us to post this interview on the internet where it may be viewed by people around the world?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Great, thank you. There's a couple more, but those are the important ones. Okay. We have many questions in a pre-interview form that we have already filled out. We use that information from the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server. Before we send it to the Benson, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members. So that will not be part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson Library. Do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview in your public file available to researchers at the Benson?
Yeah, yes, I agree.
On occasions, Voces receives requests from journalists who wish to contact, our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone number or your email with journalists?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes, I agree.
Thank you very much for answering those questions. Okay, now we can do the interview part. Excellent. All right. Thank you again for taking time to meet with me. We'll start out with some just basic, information. If you want to tell me a little bit about yourself, that's always a great place to start.
Mm-hmm. Again, my name is Xavier Tavera. I was born in Mexico City. I emigrated to the United States in 1996. And I did so in a very particular way. A company from Texas hired me to do some industrial photography in Houston for 2 months. I did so, and at the end of my contract, they asked me to keep doing the same work in Minnesota. Apparently, they were going to make the headquarters were going to be here, and a bigger facility was going to be placed north of Minneapolis, about 4 hours. And they promised to arrange my papers, my legal documentation to be in this country, and they also promised to a salary and to pay for my school. Back then, I was studying law in Mexico City. I was on my 3rd year, and I dropped everything after the 2 months of work in Houston. I moved in September of '96 to Minnesota. Right away, by '97, I was enrolled at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And by the end of '97 or the beginning of '98, the company went bankruptcy, and everybody fled. And I decided to keep on studying. So I kept it going all the way to '98, where my debt was all the way to the ceiling, and being an international student, it was pretty much double. So the Minneapolis College of Art and Design were great on allowing me to keep on going until they told me, you're just going to bury yourself in debt. So maybe it's a time to quit and continue later on. And I did. I dropped out, and I started to arrange my legal papers here. I got an H-1B. I got actually 2 H-1Bs after my student visa. And then I got a series of H-1Bs year by year. By 2002, I was already living with my girlfriend, now my wife, Maria Cristina Tavera. And in 2009, 2007, geez, I'm going to forget. If she hears me, she's going to kick my ass. I got married and make my status here regular. All these years, actually since I was 13 years old, I've been photographing. That is how I see the world, how I cope with living and transitions and observing. It has been a key tool for me, and documenting what I see. By when was it? 2012, my wife tricked me into going back to school. She hijacked my email and she wrote the Minneapolis College of Art and Design saying that, posting of like if it was me. And she said, I want to go back to school. 2 days later, I received a letter from them saying, we're very excited that you are thinking about coming back to school. And I'm like, what? I said, Tina, these people are calling me to have an interview. So they apparently think that I want to go back to school. And she said, well, by the way, you know, the other night that you left the computer and your email open, I went in there and I wrote them. So I threw a fit and I said, no, I'm not going to go back. And I don't believe in education. This is a bunch of waste of time. And of course I went there. If you knew my wife, you know, I went there and I applied. They offered me a full scholarship and I was able to go back to school right away. I did 2 more years at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and right away I applied to the master's program at the University of Minnesota. Through all this time, I had a job at granite quartz fabrication plant that allowed me flexibility to keep doing my art. So it was a great opportunity to leave that job behind and to pursue a master's degree that is more aligned with art, and had the possibility of me becoming and sharing what I know. So I'm a faculty right now at the University of Minnesota, where I think I am marketable to being a professor and a teacher, and also do some social service in there.
That's great. Wow, there's a lot there, and I've got other questions too that I've got to ask you about. I will ask you to go back a little bit. And usually I talk more when I engage with people, but since it's an oral history, you'll see me nodding most of the time. So just understand that, because the noises, if I say mm-hmm, that comes through, in the transcript, and then transcriptionists, they don't like that. So when you found out about that initial job when you were in Mexico City studying law, how did you even know about that opportunity that was in Texas? Were you looking for that kind of opportunity?
I was doing some odd jobs as a commercial photographer, and I wanted to incur in the industrial photography. I was photographing back then dance and theater troupes, and so many people knew that I was engaged in photography, and they called me and they asked me if I wanted to do this. And I interrupted my studies there because it paid very well, and I wanted to upgrade some equipment. So I thought this is the best opportunity that I have to, in a short time, just earn some money, pay for my equipment, and keep on photographing. Since the beginning, the work aspect of photography has been, I have made a very defined line between the commercial aspect of photography and my practice as a documentarian and artwork. So it was pretty much a gig. It was a job that could sustain the other part of what I do. That is really going into deep to interview people, to photograph people, and to disseminate the information that I compiled through these interviews and portraits.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. When I asked for, additional, photos and things like that, obviously your art is something that they would love to have in the collection, things of that nature. That makes perfect sense. And then one other follow-up question, and then I'll get into the list of questions that we have. Mm-hmm. Had you expressed a desire to go back to school over the years that your spouse had kind of picked up on, or was that something that she just felt would benefit you, and she, just decided to take a lot of initiative in propelling you in that direction?
I did express some thought about going back to school to finish that. I was reluctant to do that because I was photographing, I was making contacts, I was having exhibitions, I was having a couple publications, a museum, the Minneapolis Institute of Art acquired some of my pieces. So part of me thought, I don't need a paper that tells me who I am. It's not part of my identity. My identity is what I do as a documentarian photographer. But in the other part, I had a very crappy fabricating job at a factory. A lot of responsibility. I was doing measuring for an end product, and it was a dead-end job. It was nothing that I wanted to pursue further. I mean, I could have, push it further and be a manager of that company, but that didn't interest me that much. I wanted a job that can supplement, that can pay the rent, the mortgage, pay for the car, and allow me the time to do my photography and pursue, a little bit of grant writing, get some funding through there, but really going to dip into different communities and tell those stories. That's the final, right? The final means of this. So education was maybe an outlet that I could do. Two institutions at the time, when I didn't have the credentials, they were asking me to teach. One was Metro State, and the other one was Augsburg University. Metro State, as soon as I told them that I didn't have a master's, they said like, we cannot do anything. We're sorry. Finish your studies and come back to us. But Augsburg University, one of the instructors, Susan Beecher, asked me if I wanted to teach. And yes, I told them, yes, I would love to. I was already doing little workshops with nonprofits and whatnot, but I do not have the credentials to teach at that level. And she says, let's do something. Let's do a co-teaching semester where you're going to teach, I'm going to leave you, right? And then have that experience and let's see what happens. And I took the opportunity. She was great. She's now a very good friend of mine. And all of a sudden, I thought that I could put my 2 cents for people's education, that I could share what I know. And photography is not only technical stuff, it's not only chemicals in the darkroom and programs if you're going to do digital. Photography is really about how you live, how you express yourself, and to transmit that to students. It's actually an enormous privilege when they come with some expectations that they just want to do a class because it's required, and photography seems to be simpler, and they have a camera and they had the curiosity to know how to use it. But when they start to see and relate to the world through a camera with images and to share that information, it opens a whole completely new world for them. And I like that very much. And then I thought, well, this is maybe something that I can do instead of my fabrication work, my factory work. And so I dove immediately at it with the nice push of my wife, and and here I am.
Okay, that's great and that's exciting, particularly since everyone has a camera now, right, on their phone, and obviously it's not always the best device, but you've got a touchstone to students immediately.
Completely, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's the democratization of the image, right? The distribution these are exciting times for photography. People are like a little reluctant, like, well, if you have this gear or if you can make these type of images. People are expressing themselves. People, the grandfather with 80-year-olds that is making a little movie of his family is as exciting as anything that I or any other artist can do. And I'm all for it.
I just remembered something that I'll have to say. So since I have the free version of Zoom, we'll get cut off at the 45-minute mark, but I will call you again on Zoom, and then we can pick up, just so you don't get alarmed when that happens. I just realized that. Okay.
It'll happen in like 5 minutes.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay. Yeah, just so you know. Zoom is funny like that. So now we're going to kind of dig a little more deeply into kind of COVID and your experience with that. Since that's one of the overarching topics. So how did you first learn about COVID-19?
I heard of it. I heard of it before leaving to one of my projects at the border. I've been photographing along the border for almost 3 years, or past 3 years now. And one of the projects that I'm very interested in right now is documenting and interviewing the deported veterans. So I went to Tijuana in March of this year, 2020, and I went there. They opened the doors for me. I did the portraits that I wanted to do. I did a whole day of interviews, and then I took off east all the way to Quito Vaquito in Arizona, Ajo, and on my way back, I started to hear that this was a serious issue. So on my way back from San Diego to Minneapolis, I got that concern, right? That uncomfortableness about being enclosed in a plane, and everybody seemed a little nervous as well. I mean, not that we know much about COVID right now, but we knew less then. There were like 1, 2 detected cases in Mexico and 1 or 2 detected cases in the United States. And when I came back, you know, checking regularly how I felt, and right away, that was on spring break for the university. And then when we came back, well, we actually didn't come back. We transitioned to classes in the computer, and it started more information, more cases started to arise. So yeah, somewhere around there, I learned how critical was the pandemic.
Okay, great. And in terms of its impact on you, I guess this pertains to your teaching, maybe particularly. What kind of daily impact has COVID had on you, I guess, personally and or professionally?
So professionally, I came back from Tijuana, and it was a week that we could transition into distance learning, and the rest of the semester we did it online. And I was thinking how important it is right now to learn photography. There are really more important things in the student's life right now. Some of them are back to their parents. Some of them are stranded in the dorms. Some of them, I mean, we're all scared. So what I did is going and pushing back about the administration at the University of Minnesota that said not to have many synchronous lectures. I did them all synchronous, and I thought, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to put some normalcy into the student's life. We are all scared. We don't know if we should go out or not. We should stay at home. But what does that mean? So I had them do 3 very simple assignments, and we will meet on regular 1 hour instead of 3, but in regular class time. And and by that, trying to put some normalcy into their lives, and also mine, right? It's time to wake up, it's time to take a shower, and it's time to be ready for class. And you have to be on time, and I'm gonna take attendance, and you have to be engaged. And I really don't care if you have a sleepy face and you haven't showered, but I need to see your face, and you need to be engaged. And the assignments are going to be photograph 1 time a day. Photograph anything in your dorm, in your apartment, in your parents' house, wherever you are, and make a diary. Because this is historical. And this is historical for your personal history as well. So take a photo. We counted how many sessions we're going to have, and they took a series of photos of that. I asked them to take photos in nature. So they will go out, either take a plant in their apartment, or go to the garden or to the yard to take some images, or go to a park, or go to a national park. So to push them out their houses, so they can have fresh air and they move around. And I think it actually worked, because we were right in the middle of it, and I gave them the option to my two classes. I say, okay, we can still do this and meet 2 times a week, or we can meet not so regularly, and you can we can handle it some other way. And immediately all of them said, like, no, we are going to meet face to face. We're going to meet, well, not face to face, like we're going to meet all together. And they were very thankful for me for doing that, because all of their other classes, they didn't have any human contact. They were watching some videos, making notes, making a test online. And that really put things in perspective, and put some normalcy into their daily life. So that's the work part. My practice as a photographer, it also changed, because most of the work that I do is with people. I do portraits and interviews, so I couldn't do that anymore. But what I did is I decided to do a project in my blog, and I got out a call. I called the project 10 Feet Portraits. So any neighbor that would agree to have their picture taken, all the family will come out to the front door, and 10 feet apart, I will put my tripod, I will climb on a ladder, and I photograph them and have a little conversation, right, about this new normal, about these new ways that we were all trying to figure out. And it was very interesting. I think in a couple of weeks, I'm going to share all the findings with all the neighbors. And I photographed about 16 families. And that also gave me some normalcy. And the project gave my neighbors also some kind of face-to-face contact with somebody. Yeah, my practice has changed a little bit. Now I'm photographing objects, treating them as much care as I would do with a portrait. But yeah, has changed a while. But challenging times are gonna bring challenging opportunities too. So how to adapt to them, I think, is important.
Right. That's great. You've got so much in there that I could ask you follow-up questions about. I've got to be very targeted. So these student projects, I guess, that you had them doing when things changed in the spring, was there anything surprising, photos that they took, something that just made you really think deeply about what they were doing, or made you surprised that they would take a photo of this and why it might be significant?
Absolutely. I think it was as surprising for me as it was for them, because all of a sudden, right there in a very enclosed space, and I'm asking them to take interesting images, and their mind is somewhere else, right? Their mind is, how are they going to get food? What's going to happen with the classes? How can they get back home if they're not home, if they're going to move, right? And all of a sudden, I'm trying them to forget all that and focus on the present. I talked to them about the monkey brain. And the monkey brain, according to who knows who or just me, is this brain that jumps and wants to jump everywhere, right? Past, future, and it's jumping all the time. So in a way to control that monkey brain, you have to calm it down and set it into the present. So it doesn't jump on what are they going to do next, how are they going to solve things, or what has happened before that they haven't solved, right? Is present and present only. And through photography, they can photograph their slippers, their collection of CDs, their books, their whatever they have, and all of a sudden locks them in the present about composing and doing that. And that was a great exercise. I'm sorry, I went somewhere else. You were talking to me about, the surprises. Yes, absolutely. So we got a chance also for them to show what they were doing. And some of the images were absolutely stunning. They were great with the resources and the environment, the confined environment that they were living in. It's a little bit of escape from that confinement and then share that with everybody else. So it was very interesting. And also these are some of the students are super courageous. I had a Chinese student that disappeared for 2 weeks, and I was concerned, emailing her constantly, and after 2 weeks she told me that she went back home and she had to be quarantined in a hospital for 2 weeks. And then from there, she was going to be quarantined in a hotel for another 2 weeks. And then she will go home and quarantine for another 2 weeks. And I told her, crappy Wi-Fi, bad communication, all that stuff. And at the end, she was complying with all the assignments. And she sent me some beautiful landscapes of the region that she lives in. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Even with those very strict confinement, she was able to, in transition, do the assignment and come up with, a wonderful set of images. So, yeah, it has been super interesting.
Good. Let's see where to go after that. That's really all very good. Your stepchildren, are they school age? Are they working? Are they in college or?
My young kid, they are in Tacoma, Washington, and finishing their fourth year studying geology.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
And my other kid is here in Minneapolis, very active in food distribution. He works in a youth farm, coordinating and farming. He studied biology also in Tacoma, Washington. And both of them are wonderful kids, struggling still with COVID and what does it mean for them and their lives. But yeah, coping with it.
Sure. And so the one that's in school in Washington, the educational impact that child has experienced, has that been similar to what you've seen as a professor, or has it been very different from their perspective, what they've told you?
I think it has been very interesting because the new semester will start in a couple of weeks, and I decided to do it face-to-face. They gave me a shield, they gave me a mask, and I have two classes that are going to be face-to-face. And some of the kids have been asking if I'm going to turn it to online or not. And right now it's all uncertain. But at the same time, my kid in Tacoma is asking the same questions and asking their professors the similar questions and saying, how can this be, right? They want us to be face to face and it's not safe. And I'm having that same conversation with my students, right? To trying to answer their questions. It has been tricky. It's like, okay, you have to have patience, and you have to, not everybody has all the technology to give a face-to-face class and also an online class at the same time. And they are fighting like, well, no, I don't want to go back to school. I don't feel safe. And right. So having this conversation, it has been also seeing it from a student's perspective, not only from my perspective, right? And that has been a very interesting.
Right, you have multiple points of vision that you can kind of engage with. So you occupy a very unique position for sure. So your decision to teach in person, so it sounds like that was something you volunteered to do, that you wanted to do. Maybe you could talk a little bit about why you wanted to kind of take that route, because right, the risk is higher, you know, if you teach in person than if you're doing it remotely.
So there were a couple things that solidify my decision. Solidify is still a little muddy, not like concrete solidify, but I had the opportunity to teach online. I am not super eloquent. English is my second language, and I need that presence for me to transmit everything that I want to transmit to the student. That's one, and that's a personal one. Two, the students were writing to me saying, "Are you going to be face-to-face? I really want to do face-to-face." Because we have, of the same course, we have 7 iterations. It's a big school. And they can choose, right, which classes they can do, face-to-face, which ones they can do online. And the third one, a couple months ago, this government administration put out some restrictions on international students. And that was really a concern to me. And the administration said, well, if you are having certain percentage of, if the international students have a certain percentage of classes face-to-face, they can stay, otherwise they have to leave the country. And I say, like, screw it. I am going to be present also for that reason. So they can have the opportunity to stay here and to choose the class and then to have that experience. That was taken away. They retracted that policy, and the international students can be here either if it's face-to-face or online. So it was a little bit countering that, right? You're going to do that. I'm gonna put my part. I have a good percentage of international students, and I want to support them. I want to be there for them, and then here we are, 2 weeks, and we're going to start. And actually today, I'm teaching another 2 classes at Carleton College, and they are requiring everybody to be tested. So after the interview, I'm running to Northfield to be tested.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm at the University of South Florida, but I'm not in the teaching role, so I'm fully remote. But I admire your willingness to engage with students like that. I would agree. I like teaching students face to face, but since I'm not teaching right now, it's not an issue for me. So has it changed how you're doing healthcare, COVID-19? Has it changed any, I guess, how you go to doctor's appointments or anything of that nature?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm super reluctant to go to any doctor or clinic or anything like that. And now even more. I mean, of course, if I get something, right, I'm going to follow all the procedures. But let me tell you, in March, my father-in-law got sick. He thought it was the heart. So he drove himself to the clinic, and then me and my wife rushed to the clinic. When something like that happens, he doesn't want any help. So we were sneaking, waiting for him in the parking lot, right? And then while we were waiting in the parking lot, my wife called her father, and he said, "What? You're here? No, that's it. I'm leaving." And it's like, "No, we're just here to just, be here with you, whatever." So he's coming slowly in the street, and I say, "Well, I'm gonna go there and help him." And then he's like, "I'm not moving. He's gonna yell at you." It's like, "Well, let's see." Right in the middle of the street, he looked at me and he said, "I think I'm gonna need some help. I think I'm gonna need a wheelchair." So I rushed to the hospital, grab a wheelchair, went out, carry him. And the surprise thing is that usually when, I've been in one of these facilities, you go in without a problem. Now we went to the first door and the second door was closed. A voice in an intercom told us like, "Okay, who's gonna go in? What are their symptoms? Fever, this and that." And then a person masked and heavily geared came out and said, "You cannot come in. You have to wait. If you want to wait in the parking lot, is fine, but he's the only one that can go in." So they wheel him in by himself. So that was the first surprise. And then the second one, we spent like 4 hours in the parking lot. Finally, he was discharged, not with a heart thing that he thought he had, but with a respiratory issue. And he was in a wheelchair and he had a mask, and just to see the interaction between the personnel and the people who were waiting outside, the taxi driver, there was a taxi driver that arrived and was a little concerned because his passenger had a mask, and this was early on, so he didn't know what to do. He finally took him, and then we took our my stepfather home. He wasn't tested for COVID because the testing then was scarce, or only if you have some kind of symptoms. And then he couldn't move for 2 months. He was just sleeping and eating some and going back to sleep for 2 months. So the family thinks that he did have COVID. He hasn't been tested. And then right now he's fine, and he's telling his bad jokes that nobody laughs at. And that's the sign that he's doing way better. But yes, it's completely different. It's completely different. So that's the only experience that I had with a health institution.
Wow, that sounds very challenging and frightening, I guess, in some ways. I'm so glad that he's feeling better. But 2 months, that's a long recuperation time. Wow.
Yeah. So that's why, I mean, he has asthma and he has, respiratory complications. But yeah, it was a concern.
Well, I'm glad he's doing better, for sure. And you're right. When someone starts telling jokes that nobody laughs at, that's a good sign that they're feeling much better than they were before.
Yep.
Okay. see, has COVID-19 impacted your activism? How's it impacted that in any way?
That's a super interesting question because from when it started until now, right, we've been complying with everything, but we live about a quarter of a mile from where George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis police. And a mile from the third precinct. That's the precinct where the police officers belonged to, and was 3 days later after George Floyd was murdered, was burned to the ground. We were in the middle of it. So all of a sudden, COVID became a secondary concern. So we were there in the intense protesting, and for a whole week there was riots, and there was a lot of burning, and we were able to organize block by block to see how we were going to protect the houses from certain rioters that were committing, right? For the most part, the protest was peaceful and was a certain way. But there was a fraction of it. There was a lot of people from the outside coming in and looting and burning. So that was an opportunity to organize. And not only the block, also half a mile away, there's a Latino charter school, and my wife organized a food shelf, and so we were working there intensely, receiving donations, giving out food, organizing the food shelf, getting out the word that food was in need and available for people. I also volunteered in one of the breweries that they converted into a food shelf. When I was not doing that, I was cleaning up with a broom and a bag the streets of in the morning after the rioting and the burns. We were picking up trash and bracing ourselves for the night. It was interesting. It was interesting because people really got united, right? We were pushing for the same front, right? There's not only in Minneapolis, but nationwide, there's injustices and police brutality and whatnot. And all of a sudden, you feel the need to participate and support and have those conversations of how do we want to live, and how do we want our police to behave, and how do we want us to engage with each other, how racism, colonialism is like overwhelming, and how do we dismantle those structures so we can communicate differently, so we can approach each other differently. And COVID really became a secondary problem. Everybody, or most people in the protest, were having the precautions, trying to leave some room within each other, wearing masks and being respectful of everybody's space. There was a lot of of unrest, but I think it was very much needed for us to think differently about how we live and what do we allow authorities to do. And it's still going with that. Talks about displacement and homelessness, and most of the parks in Minneapolis have encampments of homeless folks, and it's an eye-opening, right? And what's going to happen in the winter with people that are not housed? What's going to happen early next year when people are displaced from their homes? And I'm talking not only the people who are currently without a home, but the ones that are going to be displaced from their homes and rental properties, or whatever. How are we as a society going to come together and handle this? How are we going to I don't know. It's interesting just to think in the future. How are we going to come out of this? How are we going to come out? Hopefully we come out thinking differently. Some crazy ideas about universal healthcare, right? Who would have think about that, right? If my neighbor is safe, I'm safe. If my neighbor is healthy, I'm healthy. If I'm healthy, everybody's healthy, right? Having that reciprocity. I think it's going to be important to imagine how are we going to come back? What new ideas are going to come out of this? If the vaccine, is available tomorrow, maybe there's a very good chance that we are going to go back to the same. Now it has been 3-4 months, and maybe it's going to last all the way to next year. There's a very good chance this same time next year, everything is going to be a little different. But hopefully by then it has lasted long enough that we think really hard about our privileges and how to be empathetic with people and how we can help each other. Because we're all in this together. We might not be, they were saying we're all in the same boat. We're not in the same boat. We're in different boats. Some of them have yachts, some of them have rafts, right? We're on the same storm. But regardless of economics, how are we going to think differently? And with that is not only political and economical or health. It is also, is it going to be worth showing art in a gallery? Is it going to be worth making certain type of art? Is it going to be worth communicating through those means? Is it going to be worth making some conceptual piece? Right now, it seems a little in the air. I think it's not a priority. Though I do think artists are of the most importance right now. To come up with new ideas, to reach out to people that we don't talk to each other, don't talk to regularly, to come up with new ideas creatively. And also, it's not exclusively for artists. I think we all are creative, but we have professionalized this creativity thing, right? We think it's for only a few. We are all creative and we cannot come up with solutions. So I think now is time to start thinking and to start listening to other options.
That's all amazing. You answer my questions before I have them. That's really good. Let's see. I know we're almost out of time here, and I want to be respectful of your time. Let's see, what else could we see? Something really good. I mean, all of it's been really good. I'm trying to think of something that I can kind of get the best what remains of the time. Um, hmm, hmm. So many. Maybe tell me a little bit more about your work with the food shelves that you've been doing. That's really interesting to me, and how you've seen those needs maybe change during the COVID crisis and during kind of the economic crisis and what's been going on with the police and the Black Lives Matter movement. What's your experience been there that you've seen?
You mean specifically in the food shops, or a general take?
Um, Maybe start with the one and then move to the general.
Um, the food shelves right now. They were like a band-aid, and because we have an urge to get out of this and come back to some kind of normal, they were provisional. Uh, and we've been pushing the notion of something more sustainable, because of course, with the unrest there was a lot of need. The combination with the unrest and COVID, it put that need into another level. So there was a lot of places that were doing that, and some of them have, you know, um, diminished or died. But the push to think about something that can be more sustainable, because I think we're in it for the long run. And if it's not COVID, it's going to be the economical, and the repercussions of the economical. They're gonna put people at risk and with needs. So trying to push so these are a little more sustainable. Now there's one food shelf that is every Friday, and it's actually a few blocks from here, in Powderhome Park, and that seems to be a little more stable and for the long run, because they've been every Friday for 3-4 hours. They're in there distributing food and everything else. So the first push was just to make them work, and now there's a second push to make them sustainable and to make them the flow of donations and the flow of people receiving them. That it doesn't just, right, it's a one time deal, and it's over, and people have other things to worry. So, right, still trying to work on that.
And you said your spouse has been involved in that as well,
Yeah,
or
yes, she has an enormous online and social media following, and she is using that power to her benefit, to everybody's benefit, to say, okay, this is what's going to be. What do you need? You need volunteers to shelf and move stuff. You need people who donate, right? And then all of a sudden start coordinating that until it runs by itself. When it's running, leave it to people at the school or at the park or somewhere else to keep it going. So yeah, she's been instrumental in disseminating and organizing, right, with technology and social media.
it sounds like she's very well connected to the community that you live in.
Yes, she's very well connected. So there are different types of community, right? The immediate community, that is the neighborhood, the 35% Latino population that is here. That's another community, right? And the other community that we navigate to is the artistic community, that is somehow diverse and with willing to help and whatnot. So navigating all those three different platforms.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. Okay. So I guess my final question would be: is there anything else that you would want to share about your recent experiences with COVID, or activism, or anything along those lines? Anything that you want to say or talk about that we haven't talked about?
Um, well, I mean, just a comment on and at certain points the absurdity of the institutions that I work for, trying to go back to uh, to school, right? I have concerns, even though I'm making this face to face. I have concerns about the motives of why are we going back, and you know, it all boils down to economics. So because of economics, we are equating and we're trying to balance economics with people's lives and health, and that's something that is problematic. There's no other way. There's no other reasoning that I have come up with that we're going back to school. If we lock ourselves up and come back on early January, right? I think it will be better for everybody else. Of course, I'm contradicting myself because I'm the first one who's going to be there, face to face, trying to, get my classes going and trying to people to get excited about photography and art. And at the same time, it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we really doing this? Is this is just an economic um, impulse, or it has um, any other kind of solution? So yeah, so I'm conflicted. I mean, as you see in my clumsy way of saying things, I do not have a response. I don't have an answer. This is just like free flowing, me thinking about like, okay, we're doing this, but why? And if is it worth it? Is it only economical? So yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in higher education have been having the same kinds of thoughts. Not everybody feels comfortable sharing those thoughts, right? Depending on their positions, positions, of, somebody who's cleaning bathrooms may not feel like they can say anything, about the situation. Whereas, other folks, maybe can be a little more vocal, but that's certainly.
Right, and with that in mind, I already talked to my TA and say, okay, whenever you feel anxious. This is a graduate kid that has a wife and a very, like a 2-year-old kid, and I'm like, if you don't feel safe, if you feel concerned, if you feel anxious about coming back, tell me so, and we can do something about it. You don't have to be here every day. And I want to be respectful of how you feel mentally, physically, and about your family. So, and I want to do that exact same thing with the students, right? The level of anxiety in students right now is absolutely crazy. I receive every semester from 5 to 7 or 10 letters from the mental health office saying you have to have these uh, precautions and be lenient on this stuff. And right now, I'm assuming that got elevated enormously. So I want to be conscious about that and trying to set up a culture in class where they feel comfortable. They feel comfortable around each other, and if they don't, we can do something about that. So it's going to be interesting. it's gonna be clumsy. It's gonna be not smooth, but hopefully we can, you know, keep on going.
Yeah, yeah, okay. All right. Well, Professor Tavera, I could keep talking to you for another hour because you have so many interesting ideas that I really enjoy listening to. Was there any other last bit of wisdom or something else that kind of piqued your curiosity that you wanted to talk about? One last statement, or
Yeah,
if I sucked all the all of the wisdom out of you?
well, just one final thing that we're not going to be like this forever, and that should give us a lot of hope
Mm.
that this is going to end. And I'm, very, very interested in how we're going to come out of this different, hopefully for the better. And thinking about, I'm repeating myself, but thinking differently of how we live and how we relate to each other.
That's great. That's a great note, I think, to end the interview on. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to meet with me. I'll let you know how things go as we kind of process the interviews, and someone should be in touch with you. I'll probably be in touch with you at some point because I'm very interested in the work that you're doing. So I'll probably reach out to you to get some
Yeah, reach out. Feel free to reach out. Yeah.
about your art. I actually attended an online art exhibit recently at USF, and they had some very interesting kind of pandemic-centered artwork. And I do research with farm workers in particular, and there was an artist who used to be a farm worker, and his artwork centers on farm workers. So things like that I'm always interested in. So
it's super interesting because I've been interested in migrant farm workers too. I went about a month ago. I went to Crookston, it's 5 hours north of here. They used to have a lot of migrant farm workers, but technology has changed that. And the interesting part is that the migrant worker is not more just farming. I interviewed people that work with bees, and they come from Mexico. They, every year they arrange their papers and they come seasonally to do that type of work. And I also was talking to people that work in the railroad that are also Latino. And and last year I did the same, and the Latinos that are there were working in one of these telecommunications towers. So the migrant worker has changed. It has not just stopped, it has modified. And now it's construction, and now is beekeeping, and now is other stuff. And I find it super, super interesting.
Well, that should be another conversation because now I want to talk to you about that, and I could for really
about dairy farmers in Wisconsin, and yeah, we can keep on going forever.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. We'll be in touch, and please do stay safe when you start the semester.
I try to. Thank you so much. You as well. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.